All right. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So were all y'all able to download and install Unity Hub and Unity 2020.3? All right, awesome. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and get started right away then. So this is a smaller group. We can feel free to have this be kind of like a more loose Q&A sort of thing. If you have any questions, feel free to stop us. I actually wasn't intending to get through the whole project in this session. I was thinking that depending on how much we have left, we could either have a part 2 for this platformer, or I could just post a separate follow-up video if there isn't quite enough for a whole part 2. But basically what I'm trying to say is feel free to ask questions. If I'm not too worried about getting through all of the content. I'd much rather everyone understand it. So hold on, nope, one more. Hello. Let's wait for them to join the audio. Hey, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Cool. Doing pretty good. So yeah, let's just so in order to get paid, where we ask that you have your camera on, and then at the end I'll have you all share your screens and just kind of show us that you were following along. I was just saying we were just about to get started. I was just saying that I'm not super worried about getting through all the content today. We could very easily have a part 2 of this workshop, or I can just post a video if y'all want to finish it up. So that being said, feel free to ask questions. Feel free to check in to make sure you fully get everything, because there's gonna be a lot. That's the thing with Unity. That's part of why we have these workshops. It's such a valuable tool for both for teaching and for your own knowledge, but it can feel so inaccessible to jump into. So we just kind of want to give you that starting point. With that being said, hopefully you have Unity Hub and Unity 2020.3, the LTS version, downloaded. So if you do, then go ahead and open up Unity Hub, and we're just going to go ahead and start a new project. Oftentimes we'll, when you're learning, for example, there's this learning tab inside Unity Hub, and I highly recommend exploring this and trying some of these different games out. So, it starts with these micro games, but there's also more resources that you can find either on the Unity site or within Unity Hub itself. But for this one, we're not going to be using any sort of assets. We're just going to start entirely from scratch. So we're going to go to the core section and just click on this. We're going to make it a 2D platformer. So we'll just do the 2D version, and I'm just going to call it platformer. And I'm going to go ahead and hit create project. So this is going to take it a little bit, but once it's loaded, everyone go ahead and give me a thumbs up once it is, so I can make sure not to leave anyone behind.
I swear I had Unity Hub downloaded from the last Unity, what's it called, Unity workshop, but I guess I might have accidentally deleted it, so I'm re-downloading it right now.
Okay, no worries, no worries. It's gonna take.
I'm creating an account for myself.
Okay, cool, yeah. So
I'll follow along, and I might have questions later if I'm trying to catch up.
Yeah, no worries. Cool. Yeah, this is the thing. The setup. One of the nice things about Unity though is that once it's set up, once it opens this project, which is going to take quite a while. The second few times, or every time afterwards, it's much quicker. It's just the initial loading that's the problem, and the installation itself hopefully shouldn't take that long, CO. And yeah, no worries if it does. I just got a new computer, so I'm in preparation for this workshop. I'm like, oh wait, I don't even have my stuff set up the full way I want to. So I don't know if that, but
yeah, just fingers crossed. I don't know where it went. I think I might have done the other workshop on a different device.
And actually, that does sort of remind me. I didn't tell y'all how to set up your text editor in IntelliSense because everyone's going to have their own preferences. But if y'all want to have IntelliSense working in Visual Studio Code, which is what I'm going to be using, I'm just going to send this pretty straightforward website in the chat for how y'all can do that in the meantime as well. If you don't have this, then it'll still totally work. All that matters if you have Unity downloaded is that your code is actually correct. But if you want it to be auto completing and linting for you, then you can follow along with this to make it have all the Unity specific libraries included. All right, so show of hands, who's used Unity before at all? All right, I didn't see you. Cool, awesome. Yeah, so if this is your first time seeing it, I can just kind of go over the layout. Now, the layout is super customizable. They have actually some, different options here. Like, so I can do 2x3, and then it changes it. It basically lays out these windows in different ways, and you don't have to use any of the specific ones listed here. You can move it around and put things wherever you think makes the most sense. Maybe I want my hierarchy over, next to my inspector here, but besides that, I like the 4 split. But I'm just going to go ahead and use the default here. I don't see any reason to change that, but feel free to move windows around for the sake of your preferences. So let's go over what these windows are. So the ones that just open automatically here, I have these, 5 windows? I guess 6 if you count the game. So to start out, the hierarchy is just where everything in the scene exists. It's just like a file structure, but it shows everything within your scene. So later on, we're going to have a player and platforms and stuff like that. Those are all going to be navigable here. And then right now, we just have a main camera that isn't pointing at anything. And you can see what the main camera actually sees by switching over to game. When you play the game, this is what they're actually going to see. And right now, there's nothing, so it's just a blank blue background. And then if I click on the main camera and I want to mess around with some of its features, all that stuff opens up over here in the inspector. And you can see there's a lot of stuff here. Each one of these individual items is called a component. So like, for example, the transform controls its position. You can see that it's at X, Y, and X0, Y0, and Z -10. Basically, it's right in the center, looking down at the stage, and you can mess around with these values if you want to change things about it. So you don't have to memorize like everything that's stored inside the inspector for every component, but that's generally where you'll want to look if you want to configure something about a specific object. And then down here, of course, we have everything that is included in the product, not within the actual scene. So this, I'll go into more details about the difference between the hierarchy and the project files in a little bit, but the hierarchy contains the actual instances of objects in the scene, like the player, where it is, and all that good stuff. Whereas the actual files relevant to the player and the scripts and all that are stored inside the project directory. And the console is exactly what you think it is. It just, you can come here to find your log messages and your errors. So has everybody been able to get Unity loaded up, a 2D project going? Any thumbs up? Dave and Lucas, what about you guys? No? Sia, how are you doing?
It's downloading, but I'm taking notes right now for so I can refer to them in case it doesn't load in time.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so I guess I will just, sorry, Lucas, what were you saying?
It's just loading.
Yeah, it does take a while to load. That is not new. So it's totally okay. It's not like, sometimes you think, oh, this is taking too long. Maybe I should like restart something. Nope, it just takes that long. So no worries. But yeah, I guess I will go ahead and start adding some other stuff. And then once y'all are loaded up, if you can't follow along because I've gotten kind of ahead, then please ask and then I'll just restart. So to start out, I'm going to want to add a player object to my game. So for that, I can go up to the top here to game object, and I want to create a 2D object. So this 2D object, there's a bunch of options I have, but I want it to just be a simple sprite, and I can go ahead and pick whichever shape I feel like best represents my player. I'm just going to go ahead and go with a capsule collider here, or a capsule shaped player. So I click on capsule, and boom, there's my player. So as you can see here, I'm going to go ahead and rename it to player. As you can see here, now the player is a part of sample scene up here at the top. Which, can I rename that? as a part of sample scene up here at the top, along with the main camera. And those are the only two things in here. But now if you look at the game, you can see, okay, this is what the player will actually see when they play the game. And I can confirm that by pressing the play button up here. If I press the play button, now it actually plays the game, runs the scripts, does the physics, all that stuff involved in the game. Now I don't have anything, so there's no difference. It's just kind of sitting there. But we'll change that pretty soon. And this is also how we can demonstrate what exactly happens over here in the inspector. So if I want to mess around with this player, like maybe I want it to be a little bigger, what I can do is look at these tools over here. So, there's a script tool, which can, of course, let you pan the camera around. This movement tool, which, they're all pretty straightforward, right? Whoops, I had the whole scene selected. I want to have the player selected so that I can move that. And I can use those and then rotate and, whoops. So yeah, I rotated it along the y-axis instead of the z-axis like I meant to. That is something to keep in mind, is that even though this is a 2D game, Unity does actually treat it as 3D. It's just that certain perspectives and defaults are set for you to make it easier to code in 2D, but there is still a z-axis. Everything in here is still a 3D object internally, so you can still mess around with those objects. You just generally don't want to, though. But I wanted to turn the blue one in order to make it rotate. And so yeah, there's all these different tools here. Very helpful. Scale, of course, as well. And you can also switch between these. You don't have to hit them manually. You can use Q, W, E, R, and T, and so on and so forth to switch between them. It's just the same order as the keys on the keyboard. So since these are things you use a lot, those are hotkeys that are helpful to know. Just something like, oh, I want to move it, I can just use W, and then just drag it from there without having to use precious brain space to move my mouse. All right, so now we have the player, but this isn't really the most exciting game in the world. Maybe I want the player to actually do something. That seems like a good idea. So first off, I want it to be influenced by gravity. I want there to be some physics applied to it because I ultimately want to make a platformer. So what I'll do is hop into the add component section down here at the bottom, making sure that I have my player selected. So I can go over here to the inspector and click add component. So there's a whole bunch of options for us of things that can be helpful. You don't really have to worry about memorizing all of them. The nice thing about Unity also is that it has very good documentation. So once you have the base knowledge to kind of get started, it's very easy to find individual things. Like I could just Google, like, make object follow physics or something like that, and I should be able to find it. But I happen to already know what I need, which is a rigid body 2D. So again, Unity, this is still a 3D project, so Unity still gives us the option to add 3D items, which is not what we want. So make sure you hit rigid body 2D so its defaults don't make it move along the z-axis in any way. So I hit rigid body 2D, and let's just try out what happens with all these default values. Now, if I hit the play button, I don't know how smooth this will be over Zoom, but it starts falling. It starts slow and speeds up exactly the way we want, how you would expect gravity to work. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about this? All right. Have you all been able to get the project loaded, or are you still waiting?
I got Unity downloaded, so I'm opening the project now.
Oh, you're okay. Cool. It's opening now. What about you, Lucas?
My packages are still loading.
Okay. You're sorry. You're what still loading?
The components, like the application and
Okay.
documentation.
Yeah. Gotcha. Cool. What about you, Eddie? Do you have it all loaded up? Okay. Cool. So yeah, again, once it's loaded up, if you can't figure out where the game object and all that is, then please ask, because I know whenever I get behind because something isn't loaded, I'm like, oh, I can totally catch up, and then it is much easier said than done. So please feel free to ask.
I have a question about the view.
Yeah.
Is it top down right now, or is it like a side scrolling?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the camera is along the Z axis. So I mean, as far as whether it's top down or from the side view, that's really just depends on how you design it. Right now, what I'm picturing is a side view, side scroller platformer is what we're making here. But if I coded it up in, if I decided to make my player not follow that sort of physics structure and just make it top down, then yeah, that would totally work. So I guess to answer your question more solidly though, it is viewed to the side, since the rigid body 2D's default and the gravity's default is along the y-axis, which is what we're looking at here. But you can change all that. So yeah,
wait,
that's
so
a great
what
question.
by default, like what plane are we looking at right now? Like the XY plane or like?
Yeah. So this red is it's the XY plane. Yeah. So this red is X, this green is Y, and the camera is looking along Z. And we can see that by looking at it here. The position, if we change the camera's X position, I'm going to change it to 5, and you can see how it changes the game here. So it's like, okay, camera move 5 to the right. If I change 5 here, camera move 5 up. And if I change it here to be -5, you can see that it zooms it in. So 0, I'm actually aligned up with it. And then -1 is what I wanted. Actually, is it zooming in? Or is it kind of following this default? Interesting. I don't know why it's not zooming, but you can see that once it gets to a certain point. Eddie, do you happen to know why it isn't like zooming, if there's some setting for it?
Probably something with like the 2D setting of some
Yeah,
sort.
I have something like that where I assume the default is to not zoom, but at a certain point, yeah, I can only assume that the player is configured to keep its size relative to the viewport. But you can see that once I get to 0, though, I don't see it at all, and that's because I believe there was a way to look at this in 3D. Oh yeah, if you look at it in 3D and look at what the camera is doing, it's actually lined up with the player right now and looking past it. So if I drag it back, now I can see the player again, but once I get past it, you can see the player disappears because it's looking forward, but it's looking too far along the Z-axis. Yeah, good question. All right, so let's get things back to how they were. So Z -10. Yeah, that's kind of fascinating. I didn't realize it would do that. Cool. Oh wait, I changed the player to be -10. Oh no, tragedy has struck. All right, cool. So now we've got that. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and I want to make it so that instead of just falling straight down, I want it to land on a platform so that I can actually, do the platform. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and create a platform, and that'll work in a very similar way. I just go up here to game object, go down to 2D object, over to sprites, and then I'm going to add in this time a square. So it spawns a square. It spawned it down here, which is actually kind of weird, but not really too big a deal. So now I want to go ahead and move the square over to right here, and I can zoom in and out if I want. In fact, I think I'm going to make it a little clear what's going on. Move the square over. I'm going to scale the square so that it is underneath the player. And it is no longer a square, it is now a rectangle, but that is still allowed. Unity does not mind. Okay, cool. So now I have that. I don't like that it's a little off. I can also manually set the numbers in here. So I kind of dragged it to a spot, but maybe I want it to be a little more, flush to the grid. I can just say, all right, I want this to be 0. I want this to be -3 to be a little more precise. And then I can also round these two. This is 8, and this, I'll just go ahead and make it 1.5.
Oh, which 2D object did we choose for the player?
Oh, the player was a capsule. It doesn't really matter. Just if you want yours to look like mine, then you would do the capsule. But whatever shape you think feels the most player-like. Yeah, and then after doing the player, I added a rigid body 2D, and I didn't change anything about the settings. So it's just kind of the default here. So now I have a platform. So if I press play, hopefully the player will start falling, and then once it hits the platform, just stop there and everything is all good. So I'm going to go ahead and press play and see if that's what happens. It does not. It falls right through the platform. Very sad. But luckily, there is a fix to that, which is I just need to make the platform collidable, as well as the player. The player actually isn't collidable right now either. So to start out, I'm going to go ahead and go to the platform, which I guess right now is just called square. I'll rename that. That's misleading, seeing as it is a rectangle. I'll just call this platform. Oops. And inside the platform, I want to add component, and I'm going to go ahead and add a collider. So I started typing collider. You can see there's a whole bunch of them, but it's probably no surprise that these all work the same, but they're just different shapes. And it's probably no surprise that the best one for a rectangle is going to be the Box Collider 2D. So now we have this Box Collider 2D. I'm just going to go ahead and press play again and see if this works now that it's colliding. It does not still. And that's because even though the platform is collidable, the player is not. So I just need to do the same thing. I'll go to here. I'm going to click down here and click add component. And I'm going to add in a, I'm going to add in a capsule collider 2D. And again, just using defaults for all of these. And now if I hit play, it falls and then lands on the platform. So yeah, so we were able to get a decent physics system going, and kind of the basic physics of the platform are going without writing any code. This is all just configurable inside Unity's editor. Now we could have written code that does this for us, and sometimes that is necessary if we just don't like the defaults. And there are plenty of configurable settings, but there may not be everything we want. So we could write scripts that override all this, but it's nice to be able to just build it up with Unity's default behavior. So now, though, I want the player to move around, and that is actually going to require some scripting to make sure it does it in the way that I want. So before we get started on that, though, where are y'all at? So CEO, you're caught up. Okay, everyone's caught up. Cool, awesome. Yeah, let's go ahead and start the script then. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the player. Well, first, I want to add a place for my scripts to live. I want it to make sure it's pretty organized. So inside the assets folder, I'm going to click here and I'm going to add a new project. So right click, hit create folder, and then I'm just going to call it scripts. Oops, if I can spell. I can spell. All right, there we go. Cool. So now inside the scripts, I'm going to go ahead and just create a C# script. And when I name it, I'm going to use Pascal case. Who here has not used C# before? Anyone? Or has everybody had some experience with C#? Okay, Kevin, this is new to you. Okay, cool. So C# is a statically typed language, very similar to Java in that sense. So if you haven't used things like that before, it'll take some getting used to, but if you have, then it should feel relatively natural. So the class name has to match, or the name of the script has to match the class name. And again, we're going to use Pascal case. Basically, each word is capitalized. So I'm just going to call it player controller. Nothing special about this name, just what I want to call it. And I'm going to name this script that. So now I'm going to double click it to open it up. And then hopefully it should open up in your favorite text editor. If it doesn't, then please raise your hand and hopefully we can troubleshoot. But it already has some code in there for me. It says all these things that it's going to be using up here at the top. We don't really need to mess with those for now. And also it defines the class and gives us a start method and an update method, along with helpful comments talking about what they are. There are more methods that Unity keeps track of that I can add, but the most important ones usually are these two, where start gets called once before the first frame. So this is where you want to set up anything that needs to be set up in the beginning. Like, for example, if say you have like a weapon in your inventory or something like that, you want to equip that. That would happen at the start. And then update gets called every single frame. And this is where most of the magic happens in Unity, is inside the update methods of the various game objects. So basically, you can think of it as there's like one big invisible loop calling update on every single thing in the hierarchy every frame. So anything you want to consistently happen is going to go into here. So let's go ahead and get that started. I want to make it so that when every frame is going to pay attention to which key is being pressed and go in that direction, if any. So luckily, Unity has a system in place for keeping track of the inputs. And that's just the input is in with a capital I. So I want to set the velocity of the rigid body to be whatever the input is. So this is going to be kind of a long line of code. And I'm going to try to take it a step at a time, but going to have to just lay it all out there and then come back to explain it. So I want to get the rigid body of the object that I'm in. So I'm going to say transform.get component and then rigid body 2D rather, and then parentheses. So this is, transform is just the object that I'm in itself, the one that keeps track of all its placement and all that. The component has there's a rigid body 2D component, which is what I created over here. So player, I want to get this rigid body 2D so that I can mess around with its velocity. Since the rigid body 2D is what keeps track of all the physics, and the best way to make sure that what we're doing gels with Unity's built-in physics system is to trust it as much as possible and just say, hey, I want to set the velocity, rather than, for example, us manually changing position every frame, which would work, but it could create some problems down the line if Unity's physics system is making assumptions that we don't follow. So, and then I want to just say, all right, this rigid body 2D's velocity. Well, I want to set it equal to, whether it's going, if it's going right, I want it to be positive. If it's going left, I want it to be negative. And if there's nothing happening, I just want it to be 0. And like I said, there's this input system that Unity has that keeps track of everything the player is doing, everything they're inputting, and puts it back out as a number. So I'm just typing this out right now. I'm going to have to change this since it doesn't work exactly as is, but I just want you to see the input method. So input.getAxis, and then I'm just going to say the horizontal axis. So basically, whatever they're doing horizontally, if they're pressing the right arrow key, this is going to give us 1. If they're pressing the left arrow key, it's going to give us -1, and if they're doing nothing, it's going to give us 0. And the reason why we do it this way, using the get axis horizontal, isn't, rather than hard coding left and right, is partly for configurable keys, but also because they aren't necessarily going to be using a keyboard, right? If they're using a controller, this get axis might not just, if they're using a joystick, it might not just do -1, 0, and 1. It might do some sort of decimals along that way. So if they're gently pushing the joystick, it's going to be smaller. But right now, I at least only have access to a keyboard. I don't know if you guys are coding on a controller right now. Maybe you guys are using a joystick to type. But so for me, it's just going to be -1, 0, and 1. But it does take issue with this. It says, wait a minute, input.getAxis horizontal. What's going on here? Well, it can't convert a float. So it's telling us this is going to be a float. It's going to be a decimal value. But it wants to, what I'm setting velocity to is a vector 2. Basically, I'm getting the x-axis, but it needs the x and the y-axis. So it's worth mentioning that I can't just set the x value of the velocity directly. The velocity is read-only, so it gets mad there. I have to create a new velocity and replace it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this inside a new vector 2, and then the x velocity is going to be the axis, and then the y velocity is going to be 0 for now. Of course, once we start messing around with, well, I mean, we already have gravity, but we are going to have to change that in a second. But let's for now just focus on the horizontal axis. So let me make this a little more visible here. Yeah, so this is the whole line of code that I just added in. Let's see if it works. And then I'll come back and let y'all copy it down if you haven't been able to once I test it out. So I'm gonna go to here. And I'm just gonna press play. Okay, so it falls, that's good. Nothing in the console, that's good. And then wait, nothing happens. I'm pressing the arrow keys, but nothing happens. And the reason for that is that even though I wrote this script, it's not attached to anything. I said that the transform is whatever this script is a part of. I'm gonna mess around with that, but the script is not attached to anything. So I can go back into player and I need to put this in as a component. So there's quite a few ways I can do this. I could click the add component and do it manually. I could also just drag it in. I can just drag this script to here. And now this script is a part of the player and applying to the player. So I press play now. Okay, so when it's falling, it's starting to fall like molasses now. But it does if I run this, oops, I forgot to constrain the rotation, but yeah, but it is moving, it is working, it is moving. And then, eventually I can go off and then, yeah, mess around with it. So that might not be exactly what I wanted, but it's doing something. But why is it falling like this? Let's start with that. Anybody know, can anybody tell me why they think it started falling so slowly once I applied this code to it right here?
Is it resetting the Y to 0, but then
Yeah.
gravity is reapplied?
Yeah, exactly. Inside every single frame, the physics says, oh, gravity is applying. I'm going to change the Y velocity by a little bit. And then our code comes in and says, hey, wait a minute, I want that to be 0. So it's basically doing only one frame of acceleration total across all frames. So it's just falling incredibly slowly. So that's exactly right. What I would want to do is set it to the Y value of the velocity, make sure this doesn't change. And so I'm trying to think of what, I could just put it back in directly, which I guess is what I will do for now. Well, we can clean that up in a little bit. If we can get to that.
Oh wait, I might have missed something when we were setting up the player object, because when I tried to drag the script into the inspector to add a component, I got the script doesn't inherit a native class that can manage a script, and it says I can't add it.
Okay. That one
All
I
I
don't
did
know
for
offhand.
player was I just added the game object, and then I added the 2D capsule collider and rigid body 2D.
Okay. Can you share your screen so I can check that
Yeah,
out?
1 sec. My laptop's being really slow right now.
Yeah, no. I thank you all for bearing with the issues of running Unity as well as Zoom. Yeah, for those of you who, if anyone's using Visual Studio as well,
yeah.
then that's
So,
even.
yeah, also Visual Studio. So I have my player, I have my rigid body 2D and capsule collider, and then try to add component, and it says.
Okay. The script does not inherit a native class that can manage a script. Okay. The script don't. Also, that's a little weird, but anyways, let's look at the actual script itself, because that does seem to be what you should have been doing.
Okay, let me share the.
Yeah.
So here.
And it's.
Oh, I just did this.
Oh, wait. I think I see it. Yeah. Change on line 5. Change new behavior script to player controller.
Okay.
So it looks like you changed the name after the script was already created, which I should have been more clear about. But because the script name and the class name don't line up, it just doesn't work.
Okay.
But because they're the same now, yeah, you should be good to go.
All right, cool. Thank you.
All right. So hopefully that works. Now let me go ahead and share again.
Could you show me how to actually drag and drop the script? Yeah, I also had that error. So
okay, yeah, no problem. So if I'm in Unity here, whoops. Unity. Okay. So inside project, I have my scripts here. And if I'm going to take this out, I'm going to remove the component so we can see it. And all you need to do is just pull it from the folder into here. Make sure you put it over the add component button. I don't think I was clear enough on that either. It'll only do it if you put it in the bottom. If you can't put it in anything here, well, I guess you could if you're really precise, put it in between here. But I don't. There isn't really a particular reason to have them in order, so I just put it at the bottom. And yeah, so there it is. It shows up. And another thing you can do, yeah, that should be how you do yours because we already built it. You can also just create the script inside the inspector. Like if I want to make a new script and I knew it was going to apply here, I would just say create, like, I don't know, I'll just call it new script. And then if it doesn't recognize what it is, we'll call it test script or something. If it doesn't recognize what it is, then it actually just creates a script for you and adds it into the inspector directly. But I didn't do that because it just put it inside the assets folder for us, and I want it inside the scripts folder. I think there's a way to configure that, but I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm still getting an error. I don't know if I
Okay,
did
yeah.
something wrong.
Can you share your screen?
Yeah. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. Yep, I like the colors.
So when I drag it.
Yeah. Okay, what does it say? No, it's true because the script class cannot be found. Okay, let's go ahead and open up the script and see what the deal is there. So yeah, it seems like maybe something's up with
Okay, I can show.
there might be a typo or something, which again, if you don't have IntelliSense set up, which I should have posted beforehand, I apologize for that. It can be hard to find if there is something wrong.
So my show you the actual script.
Yeah, I think there's probably just a typo or something in the script. Okay. Oh yeah. So on line 16, I started typing, and then I didn't finish because I helped CEO. Just change that transform.getComponent there to a 0 for now is what I still have it as 0.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was going to use that to get the Y value, but I didn't finish. So apologize for that. Now, if you try it out, hopefully it should work. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and make things a little simpler here actually, because I did want to sorry, let me share again. All right. Yeah, I did want to add in the Y value here. So what I could do, you don't need to copy this down because it's long, but just saying that this would work, I could get component rigid body 2D. And then, the dot velocity dot Y. And this is what I want. This will work. Assuming I didn't make a typo here, but that's long and complicated. I'm also doing this exact thing twice, right? So what I can do is I can make a variable up here, declare a variable that I'll just keep that is just the rigid body 2D, right? And so I can say, up here, I'm making a rigid body 2D variable, rigid body 2D. I'm just going to call it RB for rigid body 2D. And then I'm not going to set it to anything here. What I'd like to do is, use get component and put it in, but I can't because the code that goes here isn't guaranteed to run when the rigid body already exists. Basically, all the stuff that is Unity specific, you can't set here because it needs to be done in start. So I can go here and say RB equals get component rigid body 2D. And so now I can just use that. And you may notice I didn't use transform here. That's because transform is this. So it's in the same scope. So I don't actually need the transform. But now I can shorten this a lot by saying RB.velocity. And then here, RB.velocity.y. So now if I try it out and hit run, then hopefully we end up with it falling more naturally, not the kind of slow fall. Yep, cool. Okay, the reference script on this behavior is missing. That's just a warning though. What is it? I don't actually know. Oh, I see why. It's because I deleted that test script, but I didn't remove it from the inspector. I'll just do that real fast. Wait, isn't it? Oh yeah, here we go. Remove component. All right, so I got rid of that warning. But yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and head back to this code here. So does everybody have this code down? Is everybody able to get the character moving? Okay, cool.
Actually, I think I might have messed up. I'm so sorry. Could you
No, you're
show
good.
me like the settings to make the character fall again? I
Yeah.
think like for some reason it reset. I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah, no worries. So to make the character fall, all I need to do is have a rigid body 2D. And that's it. I just need to, where is it here? Yeah, this rigid body 2D. I didn't change any of the default values. You just add component down at the bottom and make a rigid body 2D. And I already have one, so I'm not going to add another. But that should make it follow the rules of physics. Oops.
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. So now I have that. There are some things I want to change though. It moves pretty slowly and it also falls over, right? When I tell it its velocity is going to go to the right or left, I mean it goes, but it drags on the ground, so it ends up tilting itself over. It's also super duper slow. So I kind of want to change both of those things. First, I'll make it so it doesn't rotate and the player just stays upward so they don't fall like that. And for that, that actually is inside the rigid body 2D. Now we are going to mess around with its settings. Inside here, there are some constraints. There's a freeze position, X and Y, and a freeze rotation, Z. So basically this is saying on this axis, can it move? So can it move along the X and the Y? And yeah, we want it to be able to move along the X and Y, the X and the Y. Both of those are good for a platformer. But sometimes you may not want something like that in a game, right? Like at a 3D game, you may, or a 2.5D game, you may not want to be able to move along the Z-axis, so you would constrain that. But that's just by default in 2D games. But with the rotation, I don't want to rotate along the Z-axis, which is the only option of rotation here. Because the way it works, the way rotation works in Unity is a little bit counterintuitive. It's basically the axis of rotation is the axis that's pointed out. So what I mean by that is if we swap this to 2D here or to 3D, and we look at this here, the green is, and it says it here, green is Y, red is X, and Z is blue. It's basically rotating around the Z axis if it rotates in the way that we can see, which is why it's called the Z axis. Yeah, so go to here. And then, yeah, so, but now that I've frozen the rotation of the 2D, now that I've frozen the rotation along the Z-axis, it no longer rotates. It cannot rotate along the Z-axis, so I can freely move left and right, and nothing happens. It just keeps on doing its thing. However, it's still really slow, kind of a boring platform if we're going to be going this slowly. So for that, I can edit my script so that it goes faster. So if I just head back into VS Code, I want to multiply this by a constant factor. So I could just put in here, I could just say like times like 5 or something, right? But in general, you don't want to hard code numbers, especially something as critical as the speed. We're probably going to be using that more in the rest of our game as we build it. So up here, I'm going to go ahead and make a variable for that. I'm just going to say public float speed equals 5f. So the f isn't really necessary here because it's going to be stored in a float anyways, but this just makes it a float. This makes it 5.0 instead of 5. But that's not super important here. But what is important is, I made the speed variable and I declared it and set it in here. in this case, I didn't have to set it in start. I could have just declared it here and set it in start, and that would have worked just fine. But I didn't have to because, 5 is just 5, right? It doesn't need to be built up by the rest of Unity's scenes. So that's all good. And now I need to actually apply this. So the input.getAxis horizontal, I'm going to say times speed. And so now if I run this, takes a little bit to build, but it's moving much quicker now. I don't know how well y'all can tell that over Zoom, but this is a much speedier object.
Wait, sorry, could you go over like freezing the like not like turning over like the rotation
Yeah.
thing again?
Yeah. So all I need to do there is just open up my rigid body 2D in the inspector. And then there's a constraints, which is hidden by default. So you need to open this up under constraints and just check this box under freeze rotation. That makes it so it cannot rotate along the z-axis, which is the only way it can rotate in a 2D game, at least by like the physics. You can still rotate along the x-axis, which I'll do right now to show. If I go into the players and rotate it along the x-axis, for example, I'll make this like 1, or what is the units here? Is it degrees? It is degrees, right? 45. Yeah, you can see that it kind of squishes, but it's not actually squished. What's actually happening is it's tilted, but because we're looking at it from a 2D angle, it appears squished. And something else I want to note that I really should have said this in the beginning. It seems like none of you have suffered the consequences of it, but I should have noted this. I just made this change here while I was playing. So, conveniently, if I stop playing, it switches itself back, which is nice. It's actually really helpful to be able to mess with things and know that I don't need to worry about what it was when I'm experimenting to get back. Now, of course, the consequences of that, though, is if you don't realize you're still playing and you make a bunch of changes to the settings, then they're all just gone and you have to redo it. And that does happen. That pretty much every workshop it happens to someone because
It did happen to me.
It happened to
And then
you,
I was
yeah.
just like, and then I figured it out.
Yeah. So I apologize for that. I should have mentioned it to warn you guys against it because that is a big thing. But yeah, if you make a change and then suddenly it just seems to be gone, it's probably because you changed it while you were playing, and when you stopped playing, it went away. And hopefully, you make small changes and test frequently so that if you do make that mistake, you don't lose too much. But yeah, sorry for not mentioning that until now. Cool. So this is the important stuff that I wanted to get to. Like obviously there's a lot more to do and we still have more time, so we'll add in jumping and all that. But I just wanted to check in with everyone, see, does everyone have all this? Is everything making sense to everyone? Because then this is, while it may not be the most impressive game in the world, it does have like a lot of the core basics for you to get started. And I do want to note one more thing. When I went into this class here and I added the speed, I made it public. So, if you've taken CS61B or, anything with Java, you've learned about the different permission levels of variables and all that. But it actually has something special that it does in Unity. By making it public, I can actually mess around with it outside of the script. So right now the default speed is 5, but I can change this to 10 and it will override that value that I put as the default in the script and allow me to actually, use it at speed 10. So that's helpful. That doesn't really make too much of a difference here since we only have one player, but when you have multiple instances of a certain object, then that is a lifesaver. As well as if you need to access a specific item, like if I had code that messed around with the platform in the player, that's by far the easiest way to get it is by just making a variable for the platform and dragging it. We won't get to that in this lesson, but if you look at any of the previous workshops, they cover something similar as well. All right, cool. So now what I want to do is make it so I can actually jump. So let me see here. I'm actually drawing a blank to how to get it on a specific frame rather than just constantly like we did for moving. Let's get access. Oh, get button down. That's what it is. Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hop into here. And what I want to do is before I set the velocity, I'll want to calculate, well, did they jump? And I can just do that if they pressed the jump button on that frame. So at the beginning of the frame, I'm going to go ahead and add an if statement. So I'll say if, and then if statements in C# need the parentheses, input.get button down, and then jump. And so if they do that, I'm going to go ahead and just for my own knowledge, I'm going to log debug.log jump so that when I check the console, every frame where I'm jumping, it'll show me that. But then I'll also want to set the Y velocity to a specific value, to a certain jump power, which I'll go ahead and change up here to keep it consistent. So I'll say public float jump power, and I'm not really sure what's good. I'm just going to say 15F. Maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. We'll find out. And then I can set that into here. So I'll just say, just to keep it consistent with what I've written further down for the sake of time, I'll just set the Y value directly in here, and then change it up later on. So I'll say rb.velocity equals a new vector2. And this time, I don't really care what I'm going to do with the X value because I'm about to set it down here anyways. So I'll just put this back to 0. And then here, I just want to put in jump power. So I modify the Y value to use a jump instead. So if I save this and run this over here in Unity, all right. So yeah, okay, 15, maybe a little bit high, but it works. I am able to jump, and I can jump anytime. That is sometimes a downside. I do want to confirm that I did this right. Okay, yeah. So if I hold it, yeah, okay. If I hold it, it only does it once. Cool. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and change this, and I can also experiment while I'm doing it, but I'd rather just do it inside the script. So 15F, change that instead to maybe 10F, we can 8F. Now I'll leave this on the screen for a bit, so y'all can copy it down. Now give me a thumbs up once you have it and once it's working, because there's one more quick thing I want to show you guys, which is where these come from, jump and horizontal. How did I know to use those and what does that mean? But this is more important, so I want to make sure you guys get it down.
I'm getting the compile error, and
Okay.
I don't have like a lot of the
Yeah, okay. Let me go ahead and you share your screen. Oh, you know what I should have done? I should have set it up so you guys could just make stuff correctly, but all right. Does it say what the compiler is when you run it?
it just says all compile errors have to be fixed before you can enter play mode.
Well, so
Capitalize
inside the
log
console or underneath the
line
console, it
20.
should-
Right here.
yeah, good catch.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Let me see if it works.
nice going.
Yeah, usually on the very bottom, it'll tell you like the reason for the error.
Yeah.
Like it'll be like something doesn't exist or like
Yeah,
missing
so yeah,
something.
very bottom of Unity, it does tell you that. So, yeah, I just realized that I should have done is, oh shoot, I'm not signed in. All right, I guess I'll just go ahead and put this in, show you guys in Unity real quick. Let me share my screen. All right, so yeah, last thing I wanted to show y'all that's relevant to what we've been doing is where did these come from? This, get this out of the way. This jump and horizontal, what do these buttons mean? How do I know which buttons they are? Can I change these buttons? Like right now I use the space key for jump. What if I wanted it to be something else? Well, all that is right here inside of inside edit, inside project settings. There's a whole bunch of stuff, but what I'm pointing out here is the input manager. And if we look at these axes, this is where they all are. So the horizontal axis has, you know, a certain name. It has, you know, all these things, which are pretty straightforward. You can look at the name of the setting and kind of know what it probably is. From there, you can set what the buttons are, the default buttons and the alternative buttons, and then same here with jump. So you can see like, okay, it's spaced by default, but I could have changed it to something else, and it would have worked just fine. I can also have it be multiples. And then again, if they're playing it on something like a console, because Unity is cross-platform and they don't have to be using a mouse and keyboard, it'll just automatically account for that as well. All right, cool. Does anybody have any questions about any of this? Okay, awesome. Yeah, so like I said, you know, we didn't get to, I mean, I guess if you technically have the moving and jumping, that's everything that a platformer technically needs, but we probably want to add a few more features, which I think I'll do in a follow-up video. I'll talk with Lita and JD and see if they want to do a second workshop on it, but I have a feeling it'll just be a video that I post. But yeah, and then if you have any questions about this or anything else that you want to expand on either in this project or Unity in general, or obviously, as always, anything, then feel free to reach out and we can set up a time to meet and go over that. Yeah, so with that, I'm going to do one last thing. Y'all can get going if you'd like. We are at time, but this should take only a few seconds. I just want to go ahead and well, let me stop sharing. And then I just wanted to share my code directly with y'all, which I should have done in the beginning, but completely forgot about. Just let it actually do it. Cool. What? All right, never mind. It's acting up. So I'll post it out. We'll post a GitHub repo with it. All right, cool. Yeah. If you don't have any questions, then thank you so much for coming, and I will see y'all soon.
Thank you, Nick.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.